Now listen up, because I'm going to tell you a story about a man who thought the rules were for everyone else. A story about a corporate showdown that wasn't just dramatic. It was recorded, packaged, and delivered straight to the internet, proving once and for all that in the corporate world, sometimes the biggest weapon they have against you is the policy manual you never bothered to read. The man we're talking about, his name was Marcus Vance. He worked in Dallas, Texas, for a company called Ether Dynamics. Ether Dynamics wasn't selling widgets or fixing leaky pipes. They dealt in high-end consulting, the kind of work where they charge companies a fortune just to tell them how to breathe correctly. Marcus was good at it. Scratch that, Marcus was brilliant. He was the kind of employee who brought in so much revenue that management generally left him alone. Marcus was 35, sharp dresser, drove a cherry red Mustang, and he had that specific kind of confidence you only find in people who consistently beat their quarterly targets. He walked through the glass towers of Ether Dynamics like he owned the place, giving nods to security guards and maybe a little too much casual wave to the junior associates. He had earned his spot. He knew the systems. He knew the clients, and most importantly, he thought he knew exactly how far he could push the boundaries without snapping the chain. See, Marcus had a side hustle. Doesn't everyone these days? His wasn't selling knitted hats or walking dogs. Marcus was building his personal brand. He had a YouTube channel and a LinkedIn presence called The Corporate Maverick, where he shared insights on productivity and strategy. He'd spend his lunch hour or late evenings recording videos in his home office, talking about how to optimize workflows and disrupt legacy structures. And here's where the trouble started, simmering like a pot left too long on the stove. Marcus loved Ether Dynamics' internal methodologies. They had these proprietary frameworks, things with fancy names like the synergy loop or the quantum optimization model. These were the tools Ether charged millions for. Marcus thought, well, I can't use the exact names, but the concepts, they're just good ideas. They're universal, really, so he started diluting them. He'd take the core structure of Ether's exclusive 5-pillar strategy from market domination, strip the branding, and present it on his channel as Marcus's 5 steps to winning the week. He felt clever. He wasn't stealing. He was adapting. He was demonstrating his expertise, which, in his mind, only made him more valuable to Ether Dynamics anyway. It was a win-win, right? He was becoming famous, and the company was getting a high-profile employee. He was wrong. So incredibly catastrophically wrong. The thing about large corporations is that they spend an unbelievable amount of money drafting, reviewing, and rubber-stamping policies. They create massive digital libraries of rules covering everything from how you load the dishwasher in the break room to how you handle confidential proprietary information, the stuff that pays the bills. These documents, usually labeled Employee Handbook or Corporate Compliance Manual, are thick, boring, and utterly essential. When Marcus was hired 7 years prior, he'd spent maybe 20 minutes clicking through the mandatory HR training modules. He scrolled fast, signed a digital document that said, "Yes, I have read and understood the 400 pages of rules," and got back to making money. He remembered signing the confidentiality agreement, sure, but he treated it like a formality. Nobody actually reads that stuff, but someone did. Someone at Ether Dynamics was paid specifically to read that stuff and make sure everyone else followed it. Her name was Evelyn Reed. Evelyn Reed was the chief compliance officer. She was the opposite of Marcus in every conceivable way. Where Marcus was flashy and loud, Evelyn was quiet, meticulous, and wore suits that looked like they were constructed from granite. She didn't care about revenue targets. She cared about process integrity. She was a guardian of the rule book, and she viewed any deviation from policy not just as a mistake, but as a moral failure. For months, Marcus's little side hustle grew. He started getting sponsorships. He even got invited to speak at a minor industry conference. He was flying high, oblivious of the small, cold shadow that was creeping up behind him, carrying a 3-ring binder full of very fine print. The first sign that something was truly wrong wasn't a warning email or a quiet chat. It was the atmosphere. It was a Tuesday morning. Marcus was preparing for a major client pitch when he got a calendar invite. It was labeled Mandatory All-Hands Strategic Compliance Review, Executive Suite Boardroom. That was weird. All hands usually meant the giant auditorium. Executive Suite Boardroom was where people got promoted or where they got quietly told their services were no longer needed. It was too small, too intimate, and frankly, too high stakes for a general compliance review. Marcus frowned at the screen. He clicked the attendee list. It wasn't the whole company. It was just him, his direct manager, who looked nervous in the invite, and Evelyn Reed, the compliance officer, plus 2 people he didn't recognize from the legal department. He called his manager, David. "Hey, Dave, what's this meeting?" Strategic compliance review. Sounds like a sleep aid." Marcus chuckled, trying to keep it light. David's voice on the other end was tight, lacking its usual easygoing Texas drawl. "Marcus, just be there promptly and bring your laptop. Make sure it's charged." "My laptop? For a compliance review? Are we reviewing the proper way to format quarterly reports again?" "Just bring it, Marcus," David repeated, and then hung up before Marcus could ask another question. Marcus felt a flutter of unease, but quickly dismissed it. Asterisk, they need me to present something. Maybe they finally realize my methodology videos are good, and they want to integrate them internally. Asterisk, his confidence was a shield, thick and polished. At 10:58 a.m., Marcus walked into the executive boardroom. The room was bathed in the harsh, filtered light of a mid-morning sun pouring in from a 40th floor view of the Dallas skyline. The heavy mahogany table dominated the space. Everything felt too quiet. Evelyn Reed was already there, standing at the head of the table, not sitting. She looked less like a compliance officer and more like a prosecutor. On the wall, mounted above the large screen used for presentations, Marcus noticed a small, high-definition camera mounted on a tripod. That wasn't standard. "Morning, everyone," Marcus said, with his usual, slightly too loud cheerfulness. He tried to catch David's eye, but David was staring intently at the surface of the table, avoiding all contact. The 2 legal staffers gave Marcus brief, cold nods. "Mr. Vance," Evelyn said, her voice dry and precise, cutting through the silence. "Please take a seat." Marcus sat down, opened his laptop, and tried to look professional and engaged. "Before we begin the review," Evelyn continued, addressing the room but focusing entirely on Marcus, "I want to confirm something for the record. This session, like all high-level internal strategic reviews, is being recorded. The recording is for internal training, compliance documentation, and global dissemination to our remote teams. Do you understand, Mr. Vance?" Marcus shrugged lightly. "Sure, Evelyn. We always record the big meetings. No problem here." He was still smiling. He had no idea he was giving consent to record his own professional execution. Evelyn didn't smile back. She didn't move. She just stood there, letting the silence stretch until it felt taut, like a guitar string about to snap. "Good," she finally said. She didn't start talking about market strategy. She didn't pull up a PowerPoint presentation. Instead, she reached into the heavy leather satchel sitting beside her chair and pulled out a thick, plastic-bound manual. It was white, with the Ether Dynamics logo embossed in silver. "Mr. Vance," she began, holding the manual up, "do you recognize this document?" Marcus squinted. "Looks like the Employee Handbook, 2023 edition." "Correct. The Ether Dynamics Corporate Compliance and Ethical Conduct Manual. Version 7.1. Evelyn stated. You digitally signed documentation confirming you read, understood, and agreed to adhere to all policies contained within this manual upon your hire date, and again during the annual review process in January of this year. Is that correct? Marcus sighed internally. This was going to be one of those tedious, bureaucratic meetings. Yes, Evelyn, that's correct. Excellent. Then let's turn our attention to Section 4, Subsection C, Intellectual Property and Public Representation. She opened the massive binder. The sound of the plastic rings snapping open echoed unervingly in the quiet room. She adjusted her glasses, and her expression remained utterly neutral. The mask of corporate justice. For the benefit of the recording and all parties present, I will read the policy aloud. And this is where the story pivots. This is where the air went cold, and Marcus realized that this wasn't a strategy meeting at all. This was an ambush. Evelyn's voice was clear, crisp, and devoid of emotion, reading the policy that Marcus had skipped over 7 years ago. The policy that was now the noose tightening around his career. Policy 4, C.1. All proprietary concepts, methodologies, operational frameworks, and internal processes developed by Ether Dynamics, whether patented, patent pending, or currently in developmental stages, constitute confidential intellectual property, IP. Employees are explicitly prohibited from disseminating, adapting, or utilizing CIP or any substantially similar derivation thereof, outside of authorized professional capacity. She paused, looking directly at Marcus, who had stopped fiddling with his laptop and was now just staring at her. David, his manager, still hadn't lifted his head. And Policy 4, C.3, Public Representation. Employees shall not use their employment or position at Ether Dynamics to promote or validate external personal ventures, particularly those which rely upon or reference, implicitly or explicitly, the confidential intellectual property of Ether Dynamics. Violation of this policy constitutes an immediate and non-negotiable grounds for termination of employment. Evelyn closed the binder with a sharp, final thwack. Marcus finally found his voice, but it was weak, stripped of its usual bravado. Evelyn, with all due respect, I don't know what this is about. I'm not sharing CIP. I'm sharing general business acumen. My videos are about basic productivity. Evelyn reached into her satchel again, but this time she pulled out a standard office tablet. She tapped the screen, and the large presentation monitor on the wall behind her flickered to life. The screen didn't show revenue charts. It showed a still image from a YouTube video. It was Marcus, smiling broadly, pointing to a whiteboard covered in diagrams. The title of the video, highlighted in bright yellow, read, "The Corporate Maverick's 5 Steps to Winning the Week. Optimize like a Pro." "Mr. Vance," Evelyn said, her voice now acquiring a slight edge of professional disappointment. "On October 14th, you published this video. In it, you outline a structured 5-step approach to market penetration and optimization." She clicked a button. The video started playing, muted. Marcus watched his younger, happier self enthusiastically drawing flowcharts. "This is strikingly similar, structurally and functionally, to our 5-pillar strategy for market domination," Evelyn continued. "A framework we charge clients $500,000 for the exclusive rights to implement. You call it winning the week. We call it CIP." Marcus felt a cold wave wash over him. "It's an adaptation, Evelyn. It's not identical. I changed the terminology. It's common sense business practice." "Common sense business practice, Mr. Vance," Evelyn countered, leaning forward slightly, "does not involve using the exact strategic architecture developed, tested, and copyrighted by your employer. Furthermore, you use your LinkedIn profile, which explicitly lists you as a senior strategist at Ether Dynamics, to promote this video series." She clicked the tablet again. The screen shifted to a screenshot of Marcus's LinkedIn profile, showing his Ether Dynamics title next to a link to the corporate maverick. This, Mr. Vance, is a clear and egregious violation of Policy 4C.3. Using your position to promote an external venture relying upon our CIP. Marcus felt the panic rising. He looked desperately at David, who still wouldn't meet his gaze. David simply shook his head. A silent message. I can't help you. The legal team and I reviewed the evidence extensively, Evelyn stated, her voice returning to its measured, unemotional tone. We have cross-referenced the video content with the confidential documentation you accessed on our internal server 3 weeks prior to the video's publication. The correlation is 98%. 98%, she repeated, letting the number hang in the air. You didn't just adapt it, Mr. Vance. You transcribed it and changed 5 words. Marcus leaned back in his chair, suddenly feeling the weight of the enormous table pressing down on him. His mind was racing, searching for an escape clause, a loophole. Asterisk, they can't fire me. I bring in too much revenue. Asterisk, Evelyn. I apologize, he started, attempting the smooth corporate recovery he had mastered over years of client pitches. It was an error in judgment. I can take the video down immediately. I'll make a public statement disavowing any connection to Ether Dynamics IP. We can resolve this internally. I'm willing to accept a written reprimand, maybe a temporary suspension, but my clients... Evelyn held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. She waited for complete silence again, ensuring the camera captured every word she was about to deliver. Mr. Vance, your apology is noted. However, the violation of Policy 4C.3, which I just read aloud for the record, is defined as a non-negotiable ground for termination. She pushed a standard sealed manila envelope across the polished mahogany table towards him. It slid slowly, coming to rest directly in front of his keyboard. Effective immediately, your employment with Ether Dynamics is terminated for gross misconduct and breach of the corporate compliance and ethical conduct manual. Marcus stared at the envelope. He felt his face flush scarlet. He had been fired, publicly, on camera, in front of his manager and 2 lawyers who were taking notes. You're serious? He asked, the polished veneer finally cracking, revealing the raw shock underneath. Over a YouTube video, I just closed the Hawthorne deal. That's $10 million, Evelyn. The Hawthorne deal is irrelevant to the integrity of our core intellectual property, Mr. Vance. Evelyn stated coolly. Compliance is not conditional on performance. The policy is clear. You ignored the policy. You were aware of the policy. You signed multiple documents acknowledging the policy. She gestured to one of the legal staffers. Mr. Vance, please power down your company laptop immediately. Do not attempt to access any files or send any emails. You will be escorted from the premises by security. Your severance package details are contained within that envelope, and all company property, including your badge and phone, must be relinquished before you leave the building. Marcus could feel the blood pounding in his ears. He was being shut down, processed, and discarded, all while the little red light on the camera silently confirmed that this entire humiliating spectacle was being archived for posterity. He looked at the binder, the thick white manual that now seemed to symbolize everything he had arrogantly dismissed. He had thought the rules were just suggestions. He had thought his revenue shielded him. He had thought he was smarter than the system. But the system, backed by Ms. Evelyn Reed and a thick stack of unread paper, had just won, and the whole world was about to find out exactly why. He stared at the manila envelope, the symbol of his sudden, absolute defeat. $10 million is irrelevant? Marcus's voice was shaky, rising in pitch. He slapped his hand on the table, a sound that seemed ridiculously loud in the sterile silence. Are you telling me that 7 years of top performance, the clients I brought in, the reputation I built for this company, It all goes away because of a 5-minute clip I put on YouTube." Evelyn Reed didn't flinch. She looked utterly bored, as if this was 1,000 times she had delivered this exact speech. "Mr. Vance, I am telling you that you violated the terms of your contract," she corrected, her eyes cold. "Your performance history is commendable, but irrelevant when discussing a breach of fiduciary duty and the theft of intellectual property. The policy is clear, non-negotiable grounds for termination." She leaned back, making a subtle gesture toward the boardroom door. "Furthermore, Mr. Vance, I suggest you review the details in that envelope. It includes a comprehensive non-disparagement agreement. Any attempt to publicly criticize Ether Dynamics or to claim wrongful termination will result in the immediate forfeiture of your severance and prompt legal action. We have a recording of this session, documenting your acknowledgement of the policy violation." Marcus realized the trap was airtight. He had confirmed he understood the recording. He had confirmed he violated the policy. He had just verbally admitted to being terminated for cause. He looked at David, his manager, one last time. "Dave, you know I didn't mean to hurt the company. This is insane." David finally looked up, his face gray with stress. "Marcus, I'm sorry. Evelyn is right. I saw the comparison charts. You pushed it too far. Way too far." As if on cue, the heavy mahogany door opened, and 2 men in dark suits, security personnel, stepped silently into the room. They weren't aggressive, but their presence was heavy and final. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a serious mustache, stood near Marcus's chair. Evelyn pointed to the laptop. "Mr. Vance, power down your device now." Marcus felt a profound sense of injustice. He was being treated like a common thief, like some intern who stole paperclips, not a senior strategist who paid the bills. But he knew, in the deepest part of his gut, that fighting now would only make the walkout worse. With shaking fingers, he pressed the power button on his Ether Dynamics laptop. The screen faded to black. Your badge, your company phone, and any other Ether Dynamics property, including your parking validation card, Evelyn instructed, her voice crisp and commanding. Marcus fumbled with his ID badge, ripping it off the lanyard around his neck. He tossed it onto the table. It landed with a pathetic, hollow clatter. He stood up, looking down at Evelyn. He wanted to scream, to make a scene, but the camera was still running and the security guard was looming. He settled for a low, venomous whisper. "You won, Evelyn. Congratulations. But you just lost the best rainmaker this company had." Evelyn didn't respond. She just watched him. The security guard stepped closer. "This way, sir." The walk out was the worst part of the entire ordeal. It was 11:30 a.m., peak hustle time. Marcus was forced to follow the 2 security guards through the glass-wall corridors of the 40th floor. Usually, this walk was a triumphant parade. Nods, hellos, questions about his weekend. Today, the heads didn't turn to greet him. They turned to stare. The silence was thick. Everyone knew something was profoundly wrong. They saw the golden boy, Marcus Vance, being escorted out like a criminal, his face pale with humiliation, clutching a sealed manila envelope. He kept his eyes straight ahead, refusing to look at the stunned faces of the junior associates who used to seek his advice, or the colleagues who relied on his deals. He felt the weight of their judgment, their curiosity, and their sudden intense fear. When they reached the lobby, the security guard relieved him of his parking validation and escorted him through the turnstiles and out onto the bustling Dallas sidewalk. Marcus stood there, blinking in the harsh midday sun, suddenly just another anonymous person on the street. He pulled out his personal phone and saw a stream of confused texts from David, his manager, who was clearly trying to smooth things over internally, but the damage was done. He got into his cherry red Mustang, the car that symbolized his success, and drove home, feeling like a teenager who had been caught cheating on a final exam. The The first 24 hours were a blur of shock and denial. Marcus tried to call David, who wouldn't answer. He tried to call the HR contact listed in the envelope, who only confirmed the termination was for cause and irreversible. He spent the evening drinking scotch, staring at his computer screen, ready to dismantle the corporate maverick. He was going to delete the channel, scrub his LinkedIn, and pretend the whole side hustle never existed. But he was too slow. The next morning, his phone started buzzing uncontrollably. It wasn't just texts. It was notifications, emails, and calls from numbers he didn't recognize. He opened his laptop and navigated to LinkedIn. The platform, usually a source of ego boosts, was an inferno. Someone had leaked the video. It hadn't been leaked through some anonymous dark web channel. It was posted to Ether Dynamics' official internal training portal, but someone had grabbed the link and pushed it onto an industry forum. Within hours, it had been mirrored across YouTube, Reddit, and Twitter. The video was titled, blandly enough, Ether Dynamics Compliance Review, Case Study 74A, Confidentiality Breach. The content, however, was anything but bland. It was a 15-minute masterclass in corporate execution. The internet loved it. It wasn't just Marcus being fired. It was the way he was fired. Evelyn Reed, the granite-suited compliance officer, reading the policy aloud, the policy Marcus had dismissed as useless paper, had turned into a global meme. The comment section was brutal. Asterisk, this is the most satisfying corporate takedown I've ever seen. That dude's face when she reads 4. C.3 is priceless. Asterisk, asterisk. He thought his revenue shielded him. The handbook is the true law. Asterisk, asterisk. Evelyn Reed is my new spirit animal. Don't mess with compliance. Asterisk, Marcus watched the video. He saw himself, the arrogance draining away, replaced by disbelief and then raw panic. He watched the moment he gave consent for the recording, the moment Evelyn closed the binder with that decisive thwack. His personal brand was annihilated. The corporate maverick was now the corporate thief who got owned by HR. His YouTube channel, which had been his pride, was flooded with comments referencing Case Study 74A. His professional reputation, the thing he had spent years crafting, dissolved in 48 hours. A week later, Marcus sat in his sparsely furnished home office, the cherry-red Mustang parked uselessly in the driveway. He hadn't been able to secure a single interview. Every recruiter he spoke to politely declined, citing concerns regarding professional integrity. A polite way of saying, "We saw the video, Marcus." He tried to argue the details, that the policy was vague, that his adaptation was minimal. But the video showed Evelyn Reed reading the policy clearly, and Marcus agreeing that he had read it. The policy was clear. He was guilty. Meanwhile, back at Ether Dynamics, life had changed dramatically. Evelyn Reed was suddenly a corporate celebrity. She didn't seek the spotlight, but her effectiveness was undeniable. The video went beyond a simple firing. It became Ether Dynamics' most potent internal training tool ever created. Compliance rates across the company skyrocketed. The annual training module, which used to take employees 20 minutes of fast clicking, now took 2 hours, because everyone, from the janitorial staff to the senior partners, was terrified of becoming the next Case Study 74A. Ether Dynamics quietly used the publicity to their advantage. They issued a press release, carefully worded, never naming Marcus, about their unwavering commitment to intellectual property integrity, which reassured high-paying clients that their proprietary methodologies were secure. Evelyn, the guardian of the rulebook, was given a significant bonus and a promotion. She wasn't just a chief compliance officer anymore. She was a chief integrity officer, reporting directly to the CEO. Her quiet, meticulous work had saved the company millions in potential IP exposure and enforced a culture of fear that was far more effective than any quarterly motivational speech. David, Marcus's former manager, was still there, quietly trying to close the deals Marcus had left hanging. He was relieved Marcus was gone, but deeply unsettled by the ruthlessness of the execution. He started reading the handbook every night. Months passed. Marcus had burned through his immediate savings. He eventually had to sell the Mustang. He took a temporary consulting gig, working remotely for a small firm in Arizona that didn't subscribe to industry news and wasn't active on LinkedIn. The pay was a fraction of what he used to make. One rainy afternoon, Marcus was reorganizing his files, packing up his old life. He came across a box labeled Ether Docs. Inside, underneath some old business cards, was the original pristine employee handbook he had received on his first day 7 years ago. It was identical to the one Evelyn Reed had held up. He pulled it out. It smelled faintly of old paper and corporate ambition. He flipped through the sections, his eyes finally settling on policy 4.C.3. He read it slowly, word by word. Violation of this policy constitutes an immediate and non-negotiable ground for termination of employment. He closed the book. It wasn't vague. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a contract, a clear warning written in plain English, designed specifically to protect the company's most valuable assets. Marcus realized his mistake wasn't in adapting the strategy. His mistake was in believing that his charisma and his revenue made him exempt from the written rules. He had treated the foundation of corporate structure, the policy manual, as an optional accessory. He had spent his career advising clients on strategy and risk management. Yet he had fatally mismanaged his own risk profile by ignoring the one document that governed his employment. He looked at the dusty manual, no longer seeing boring bureaucracy, but seeing the weapon that had cut his career down in its prime. Marcus Vance, the corporate maverick, had learned the hard way that in the cold, clear light of the corporate world, the rules are not suggestions. And when the chief compliance officer decides to enforce them, all they need to defeat you is the binding contract you signed and the simple, deadly act of reading it aloud on camera. He took the book and placed it gently into the recycling bin. He had nothing left to learn from ether dynamics, except the painful, universal truth. Always read the fine print, because someone, somewhere, is always watching, and they are always waiting to use your own contract against you.